Hello everyone, this is Margie Bruce here at Global Inspiration. Our guest this week is the owner and co-founder of Meat on the Street, a restaurant in downtown Milwaukee specializing in Filipino food. She is also this year's recipient of the Milwaukee Business Journal's 40 Under 40 Award. Watch and be inspired by her story now. Hello everyone, this is Margie Bruce here at Global Inspiration, where you need to be seen, you need to be heard, and be an inspiration to the world. Before I go to the main interview, I would like to remind everybody to please click on the subscribe button and the bell button so you get notification every time a new video is released. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Alexa Alfaro. Hi Alexa.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good, thank you. Where are you originally from?
So originally I was born in Anchorage, Alaska, which is where my parents met and married, in the hospital I was born in actually. My dad is from northern Metro Manila, so Caloocan City. And then my mom is from about Milwaukee, Wisconsin, so southeastern Wisconsin. And then shortly after I was born, we moved there, and that's where I grew up.
Oh, okay, wonderful. So you have siblings?
I have two younger brothers. One of them is, how old am I? I'm 31. So he's 26. He's 5 years younger than me. His name's Matt. That's who I started our food truck business with originally, and who is still like my business partner. And then I have one who is 7 years younger than me. He is currently 25 because Matt's birthday is coming up, but he went to school for accounting and finance, and he works at a corporation right now.
So Meat on the Street, can you tell us about it and what makes it unique?
Yeah. So Meat on the Street is a Filipino food startup in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We started in June of 2014 with a food truck. And then from there, we grew to a brick and mortar in November of 2016 in a food hall in downtown Milwaukee. We've been there for 4 years now. So we've been operating business for 6 years. We do catering services. We do essentially any event that may need food, we do. And a couple of like our mission statements are always like food is love in our culture. You knew you were in the doghouse. Like if I came home, my dad didn't ask me if I ate or if I wanted dinner, like I knew I was in big trouble. Like that is just, food is our love language in the Filipino culture. And then also we are all about culture through cuisine. So we really want to take our cuisine and get people to fall in love with it and to the point where they want to learn about the culture. I think that's extremely important. And a lot of the times the way we introduce different cultures to people is through cuisine. It's the most palatable. It's the easiest to understand and start with. So that's what I think makes us unique.
Awesome. Can you tell us why you started? What's the inspiration behind Meat on the Street? How did you start? When did you decide to start? And tell us a little history about it.
Yeah, so I was in engineering school. I was at one of the engineering schools in downtown Milwaukee, and I was working a sales engineering internship for a company, and they had me do this summer project. And my summer project was basically to determine if their current sales process was saving them money or costing them more. So I did this analysis based on numbers, and what I found essentially was the company was losing like $500,000 between the time their sales reps spent doing different quotes versus the money that they ended up making after the quote was determined and how they determined how to quote, whether it be like weight or surface area, essentially. So once I found this out, I presented it to the VP. She said thank you to me. And then she said, send your files to like my direct report, and she'll present, months later at headquarters out in the UK. And I was just like, really, you can lose $500,000 and like not be concerned, not like do much other than say, okay, thanks for your work. We'll look further into it 6 months down the road. And so right then and there, I was like, well, then I can run a business. I was in my young 20s, so I was very naive about how business worked. I have since learned a lot about it. But after that, I started kind of like thinking about what I want to do and what do I love. And I love being able to make people happy with food. In the beginning, it was a really weird statement, especially like being an engineer, my dad's an engineer. I'm very good at math. And engineering has stability in it. It has comfort. It provides all the things I think your parents want for you as a kid, as you start to grow up, to be able to be on your own and know that you have the income to support a lifestyle. But I wanted a passionate job, and I wanted to make sure I loved what I did every single day as much as possible. And so I realized that I like making people happy with food. Growing up, we were the foodie household. Growing up, people would come over and we'd make them try different things, and they would kind of like be a little bit worried. But then as they started to eat my dad's food, they were like, oh my God, will your dad make us this? If we come over, will he cook this for us? And he loved to. It's how he got to know my friends. It's how my friends got to know my parents so intimately. My girlfriends that I'm still friends with, they laugh. They were like, dude, I remember skewering sticks with you at like in middle school. So, and like rolling egg rolls, like they weren't good at it, but we made them do it and they liked it and they remember those experiences. So it was kind of intertwined into our childhood. Growing up in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, which is 20 minutes south of the city, there's just not a ton of exposure to culture, especially back in the day. I was one of two people of color in my elementary school. The other girl was Black and Dominican. We got confused all the time, even though we look nothing alike. So it was very early on that I realized I was different, but I didn't understand it. As time went on and my love for food grew, it just became more and more prevalent to me. Like my high school graduation party, I was like, I want to roast a pig. I loved picking the skin off the pig and eating it. I loved the whole aesthetic of it. I am a meat eater so much. And I just liked that it was different. And it was a part of who I was and who my dad was. My mom said, absolutely not. We're not roasting a pig at your high school graduation. So I looked at my dad and I'm like, so we're going to roast a pig. Otherwise there will be no graduate at your high school graduation. And I got to have it. And people still talk about it. They're like, that was so fun. That was so cool. It was different. And that's kind of where my love of food started and my realization of how happy you can make people with good food. And Filipino food to me was the best food. Our lumpia, our pancit, our meat skewers. Those would be the first things to go at any family party or birthday party we hosted. So that's where it really began. Once I learned like at my sales engineering internship that you could lose $500,000 and just shrug, I was like, oh, I can open up a business. So after that, I just started using Google and I researched food trucks on a macro level versus a micro level. I looked at, what certain health department rules were in our area. I looked at like the big ones at the time, which were almost all based out of California. That's where the food truck like scene was happening. And this was in 2013. And Milwaukee was starting to look at food trucks differently. So we just happened to enter the market in 2014 at a good time. My parents, bless their hearts, let me drop out of engineering school. Well, I dropped out of engineering school. I quit my internship and then I told them and they decided that it was fine. And then they invested in the business and 6.5 years later, we've grown and it's taken us all over the country, which is wild and crazy. And it's just become this life of its own and something that was needed for not only me and my family, but for our Filipino community, for our foodie community in Milwaukee. And I just think in general, to highlight that different cultures are cool and they're unique and they can be accepted.
Yes, I agree. I think you are the only Filipino restaurant in the greater Milwaukee area.
Yeah, right. Yeah. They have, there's some at-home bakers right now. So we got a little bit more coming. There is a business actually that started out in California that moved to Milwaukee and they do lumpia, but they do like American lumpia. It's like mac and cheese or, like spinach artichoke type lumpia. So that's fun. And then there's a couple of chefs that are either Filipino that do a little bit more Filipino fusion or their significant other is Filipino. And so then they add it on the menu or they do pop-up dinners. So slowly but surely it's coming. I think we were the first Filipino food truck in Wisconsin. And in the southeastern area, we are currently the only like brick and mortar, authentic, traditional Filipino food.
Meat on the street. What's in the name? For me, it means growing up in the Philippines, I ate a food that's cooked by sidewalk vendors. And that's what meat on the street means to me. So how come you picked that name and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so when we picked the name in 2014, we went back and forth. We talked about picking a more cultural name, but at the time, I just didn't think it was a good business decision. This was before like foodie Instagram influencer, where it was cool to find ethnic food and take pictures and introduce your friends to it before you wanted to find different types of food to eat. And I was just really concerned that Milwaukee, while I love it, at that time, it was really the land of steak and potatoes. It was like very specific types of food palettes, very specific types of like food meals repeated every day. So asking people to step outside their norm felt like it was going to be a challenge. Introducing a new cuisine in our city felt like it was definitely going to be a challenge. And what I've learned is, to this day, a constant educational experience. So we wanted a name that was approachable, because the food, I think, for a lot of people wasn't initially approachable. So we also wanted something that was like fun and not so heavy, because it's food and you should be able to enjoy it. And there's all types of emotions that come from it. I didn't want it to be super serious either. And then when the one time I went to the Philippines in 5th grade, I remember all the vendors and carts. Like I got the ice pops from there, the pandesal, the halo halo, all of the different types of meat on a stick. And that's kind of where it started from. And we kept going back and forth. I didn't like certain names. And one of my younger brother, Christian, his friends, it was the second one he recommended. And it was just like, well, what about meat on the street? And it was like, ooh, that works. So for 6.5 years, it's gotten us very well. People get it. They're like, meat on the street. I'm assuming you're a food truck and you sell meat. But now 6.5 years later, I'm to a point where I'm ready to actually put more culture into our name. So most likely, like 90% later this year, we'll actually do a rebrand in which we are going to change kind of what things look like from an outside, because we need more Filipino culture from the start. So as far as the name goes.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. This has been a couple years in the making, and I'm like getting to the point where I think we get to execute it and actually like roll it out to the public. So I'm really excited for that to happen.
What were the challenges that you faced making this concept into a reality?
What were the challenge? The biggest challenge, I think, was that everyone looked at me like I was crazy. And then they looked at my parents like they were crazy. Like, yo, you're going to let her drop out of her senior year of engineering school to open up a food truck. And there's this big perception that like I am an insanely talented chef. One, I don't consider myself a chef on any level. I can cook and I can prep with the best of them. And I can roll egg rolls like I would say very, very well. It's one of my skills at this point. I can skewer meat sticks to the point where I don't have to weigh them. They're all going to they're all going to be pretty accurate in their average. So that's what I'm good at. But the cooking aspect is really Matt, my brother, which is how he kind of got roped in. And he wasn't sure what he was going to do at 19. I was 24. He was 19 when we started. Youth definitely was a disadvantage, but naivety was also an advantage. We had no concept of running a business. We didn't have a ton of formal like business experience or education. So that kind of hindered us, but also allowed us to just design things how we wanted versus being like, well, this is how it's done. That didn't happen a lot with us because we didn't really know how it was done being that young. But I think a lot of it was people just being like, this is crazy. You can't even cook. Like, how are you going to run a food truck? But it also was like the thing where it was just like, I know that this is right and I can't describe it. And thank gosh, I had parents who believed in me. So that was the biggest part about getting it built and executed. As far as building it, my engineering brain makes sense. I want efficiency. I don't want you to have to walk across the food truck. I want you to have to step and pivot to get what you need. So very early on, we learned that processes, systems, logistics, and efficiency was stuff we were good at that maybe other restaurateurs weren't, because they didn't go to engineering school. They had us beat maybe from like a culinary standpoint. And then once the truck opened, I realized very quickly that every time we talked to somebody in their first 3 years, it was an educational experience. So if we had a line of 50 to 100 people in line, I would say at least 75% of them required us to educate them a little bit. So we had to get good at how we spend time educating our customers, but also being quick about it, because that truck is designed to make money. We want to serve volume while keeping a consistent product.
You and your brother have been in an episode of Chopped. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So we have been on the Food Network twice, and we did, I don't know if it was a sanctioned CHOP event, but there is a local organization called Teens Grow Greens, and they were doing a fundraiser, and they did a Chopped style fundraiser for like their virtual type of event. They usually do an in-person dinner. Obviously with the pandemic, they wanted to be intentional. So we did like a virtual style Chopped. I don't know if it was sanctioned by the Chopped people and or the Food Network, but we have done 2 episodes on the Food Network, one being Guys Grocery Games in 2018. It was me, my brother Matt, my dad, and then in 2019 we did Family Restaurant Rivals, and then that was me, Matt, and then the youngest brother Christian.
You were also in New York about 2 years ago in a cookbook tour. So what was that experience like?
Oh, that was amazing. It was a crazy time. I left Milwaukee and got to New York with an ID, like no cards, no plastic on me, and like $50 in cash. I like forgot everything because it was like in the midst of just craziness trying to pack like as I'm walking out the door. So getting there was like a different thing. But once I got there, oh, it was so amazing. It was my first time in New York. I stayed in the Soho area, and then we had a friend who knew people that had a place in Tribeca. So we got to prep in this beautiful loft space right around the corner from where the venue was. And it was awesome. We did this ticketed sold out event. There was like, I don't know how many courses we did, all like dishes from the cookbook or inspired by the cookbook. So I brought my Lola, my grandma's lumpia with me. I just packed it frozen and shipped it over because it was easier than trying to prep it in 2 days by myself. And it was just awesome to see diversity in culture and cuisine celebrated on that level. I don't get as much exposure to that in Milwaukee. So being able to travel and have I call my cookbook crew, who we're all trying to do the same thing differently, right? We're all trying to take our cuisine, elevate it, and not change it, but just put it on a larger, higher, more visible platform to educate people about our culture. So it was nice to feel like I was finally seen. I was finally part of a group that understood what I was doing, and we all experienced the same challenges along the way. So I didn't feel so alone in the journey. And then traveling for business. I mean, when we opened that food truck in 2014, never did I ever think that any of the dishes would take me to New York and do this sold out cookbook event and have people be like, when you speak about your story, I see myself in it. I resonate with it. Like it really tugs at my heart. And it was just like, that was amazing to me. Because just when, my Lolo came over from the Philippines, they didn't have this in their dreams. They didn't think that this is what it would be. So to be able to do that, to be able to have my dad and my mom see that happen in their lifetime after investing in me and believing in me, it was just like one of those moments you stand and you're just like, I hope I remember this feeling forever.
Recently, you've been awarded the Milwaukee Business Journal's 40 Under 40. What does that mean to you?
Oh, that was such a high, especially after getting through 2020, because 2020 was like a constant like survive, thrive. We were constantly like throttling between these 2 lanes. And so to start off 2021 and be like, hey, thank you for all you've done. Like we've seen what you've done and we recognize it. And at 31 to be like, you are somebody who the community sees as a rising leader or as an advocate for those who maybe don't have as much of a platform or are as noticed as they should be. It was really humbling. And then the people that nominated me too are part of like the Asian American Pacific Islander Coalition, as well as the Elevation group in our Milwaukee area. And once I met them, it was also like, I found another pocket of home. Being able to talk about what it was like growing up Asian, being able to have those people see my journey, see my hard work, constantly want to advocate and support and promote me within the community, just means the world. And then to get selected for the award is just like, we work so hard behind the scenes. And if you know what it's like owning your own business or starting up your own venture in any capacity or helping someone, you get to see behind the curtain, and it's anything but glamorous. It's the exact opposite. It's this pure perseverance and determination and blind faith in your vision, even when all of like feels like everything is working against you. So to get an award, it always feels really good. Like my work matters, it's being seen, and I'm doing something right for my community. And I'm always extremely humbled and grateful for anything that comes across.
And congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Meat on the Street supports local organizations, nonprofit organizations. Can you tell us a few of the ones that you support and why you support them?
Oh yeah. I'm gonna start with one of the earliest ones we partnered with. It is the Bayanahan Student Organization at Marquette University's campus, the BSO group. From the minute they found out about the truck, they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome! Can we have you guys on campus?" They do one of the largest fundraisers at Marquette is this fashion show they put on every year, and they've done it for years straight. So we would partner with them, and they would bring the truck on campus, and we would donate a percentage of our sales back. And it was a really great working relationship. And even more so, it made me realize how much like I like working with the youth. I love that they have yes, they're inexperienced, but because they're inexperienced, their minds work differently. And I like that. I like that they don't have as many constraints or societal things that have been told to them where they don't think like that. So being able to work with them and then working with them over so many years, because I think we started working with them right away, 2014, 2015. I've gotten to see some of them graduate and go on and do certain things and then connect with them in their graduate career. So that has been nothing short of amazing for us. We love partnering with the youth, especially like Filipino groups. We also do the Filipino Student Union at UW Milwaukee. Colleges youth are really important. And I think it's important for them to know that their voice and their opinions matter even at their young age. And that they need to continue excelling at what they do because it's important and they are future leaders. I also do work with FAWES, so the Filipino, let me make sure I get this right, the Filipino American Association of Wisconsin. So that is definitely more the older Filipino crowd in southeastern Wisconsin. They were also instrumental from the beginning. I mean, you know how it goes. Filipinos do not play games about their food. Like if you're going to say you're Filipino food and they come and try it, it better resonate with them on some level. Otherwise, that's it. They're not going to back you. So thankfully, they loved the food. We've done different events with them, donated to them. They use us for certain catering. So that's been a great working relationship. And then we've also gotten a venture to Madison, which is our state capital. It's 90 minutes west of Milwaukee, where we're located. And we've worked with the Pamana group. So Filipino American Madison area, something, but they are wonderful to work with. They throw so many different events. They utilize us a ton. We did a really fun like New Year's Eve drop off up there where people pre-ordered and then we drove it up in our car and just popped up a table in a parking lot. And I was like, this is so Filipino, but this is why I love my people in my community. They're like, yeah, we want the food. We don't care how it comes. We want it. So we've been so lucky. And I think it's extremely important to support those that support you. So we love to give back and partner with those organizations.
What has been the most gratifying part of this journey for you?
Most gratifying part is whenever, for me, it's like the moments people don't think I get to be a part of. So one of them is we do events at the zoo, the Milwaukee County Zoo. They are an awesome partner of ours. But we were at the zoo and there was a Filipino guy and his significant other who was not Filipino, and he was eating pancit and the barbecue sticks, and he's eating it. And I was close enough to overhear a conversation, as was my mom. And he took a bite and he closed his eyes and he goes, "Oh, this makes me miss my nanay, makes me miss my mom." And those are the moments I live for, right? Because for me, our food is that nostalgic. It has that emotion behind it that it brings you back to your mom or your grandma's kitchen and the cooking, and like those are the moments. That's why we do what we do. We do it for the culture. We do it for our community. And we love to be able to recreate those memories and those feelings for people that may not be able to get them in like smaller Midwestern towns that don't have a ton of like Asian population, right? Milwaukee is 5% Asian and Filipinos are lumped in that 5%. So to be able to provide that for people, like for me, that's like a huge part of what I do, where it's just like, this is why it's to have all of our elders like live on through the food and through conversations about them. And that is a huge part of what we do. And the other part for me is that like literally culture through cuisine. It is so important to me to not only educate people about our cuisine, but the culture about Filipinos. And that includes like the history, the traditional, the modern, the progressive, where we are now versus where we started. And I think it's important to talk about the gap in generations and how do we not repeat that in the future. I don't want it to be like, I'm 80 years old and all these young Filipinos, I can't identify with them. I don't want it to be like that. I want to make sure I have good working relationships so I can pass down my knowledge, my stories, and they'll live on. So I would say that those are two of the most gratifying parts of the business.
What's the best way for our viewers to get a hold of Meat on the Street? A website, Facebook page?
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways. You can go to our Facebook page. If you just search Meat on the Street, we'll pop up. You can Google Filipino food Milwaukee. We'll pop up too. Instagram is super fun because we do stories and posts, and we do polls and quizzes, and it's a little bit more interactive there. That one is going to be just at Meat on the Street, MEAT, and then the words on the street. And then we also have a website. It's www.motscatering.com. And that's more just like our menu page for ordering. We're upgrading it right now, but that's another way you can check us out or look at the food.
Finally, we ask each of our guests to give an inspiring message to our viewers. What would yours be?
An inspiring message to your viewers. One that we say constantly, me and Matt, especially in days where it's like 14 hours, we still got 3 hours left of work. It's only us two in the kitchen at this point, and we're just like drained and don't have anything left. We tell ourselves to keep pedaling. And it literally is the metaphor of pedaling on the bike. Like we joke and I'm like, well, my bike has square tires and it's not going anywhere and it hurts at this point. I don't want to pedal, but you do have to keep placing one foot in front of the other. And it is extremely important to do. That doesn't mean that you don't pause and take time to rest and recover, or you don't question the direction you're going, or if you could be going somewhere better efficiently. That is all part of it, but you do have to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Alexa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy Sunday. I'm so happy to do this. I appreciate your work that you do for our entire community because it's neat. It takes a village. It takes a village. So thank you.
Thank you. And this is Margie Bruce here at Global Inspiration, where you need to be seen, you need to be heard, and be an inspiration to the world.